Okay, Jen, here's your series. Let's play with it and see what you think. You're going to need a chair, a yoga strap, a weight, and a squishy ball. And we're going to focus largely on releasing the outsides of your hips, engaging your inner thighs, and shifting your work from being primarily lateral hip to a little bit more posterior. We're going to start and some breathing work because I think breathing work is super helpful. So we're going to start with a hamstring release and some breath work. So you just let your heels rest on the edge of a chair. You're going to be here for a couple of minutes. So if you want to fold a towel or something on the edge of the chair to make it more comfortable, please go ahead and do that. Support your head as much as you need to. And then just concentrate on sit bones nice and wide, feeling the bottom of your rib cage. Is it melting down into the floor or is it pulling up away from the floor? Can you let your shoulder blades in the back of your neck relax? Can you let your arms relax? Can you let your jaw relax? Like really identify any places where there is excess tension that will, by staying as part of that excess tension habit, potentially interfere with getting your hip work actually into your hips. So we're going to start with breathing, focusing on your inhale, really traveling into the back and sides of your ribs. Let your head and neck move however they are inclined to move as you breathe, and then just let the air go. This isn't a working breath. You're just letting the air release. The emphasis is more on this, really focusing not on taking a huge breath. It doesn't need to be a giant breath. It's just, can you gently, softly encourage the air? Imagine you could inflate the backs of your lungs more than the fronts and let it go. Or imagine that you could create more space between the back ribs than the front ribs. And let it go. Or maybe, can you imagine expanding the back of your diaphragm more than the front of your diaphragm? And let it go. So just play with different images. Notice, is there one, what's happening with your neck when you breathe in? Can you relax the back of your neck so that your chin sort of slides down a little bit towards your chest? Or is everything tensing as you breathe into the back of your ribs? Is it now also stressing the back of your neck? So you play around with supporting your head more or less, taking bigger or smaller breaths. And all of the time that you're doing this, you're also allowing the tissues at the backs of your legs, where they come up and attach to your pelvis, to just release into a slightly calmer, maybe a little bit longer than your normal resting position length, which is going to be helpful later. So having done that and just taken that couple of minutes to breathe and settle and let your hips release and relax, you can take your feet off the chair, grab your squishy ball. The squishy ball goes halfway between your knees and your pelvis. You could also use a yoga block for this, or a folded cushion, or a book, whatever you have to hand. You don't need to pull your heels up really close to your butt. You want to have a little bit of space here. And then put your hands across your lower belly so that your baby fingers are right in the crease where your pelvis meets your legs. You want that crease to stay relaxed as you squeeze the ball. And then you release. And for anybody who tends to be hip flexor dominant, this can potentially be quite challenging. So we're looking to be able to focus on your inner thighs as being the working muscles, rather than your hip flexors and quads come along for the ride. So you squeeze as hard as you can. That might be 20%, it might be 80%. It doesn't really matter how hard you can squeeze, as long as your squeeze is not involving the fronts of your legs. You are also trying to keep your pelvis and your ribs still. So when you squeeze, you've got your hands here on your lower belly. If you squeeze the ball and you feel your pelvis tucks, your pubic bones lift, then you're kind of combining that leg movement, pelvis movement, lumbar spine movement. So that's your next iteration of attention. Can you keep your thighs relaxed, and can you keep your pubic bones and your pelvic heads on exactly the same plane so they don't shift as you squeeze? And you can find this ends up being way more inner thigh work than you're used to when you do this kind of squeezing. You're also looking to keep your neck and shoulders relaxed and your lower ribs just eased into the floor. On the next one, squeeze and just hold. So again, whatever your maximum squeeze is, that's really not engaging too much of anything else. You might feel a little ab work, you might feel a little pelvic floor response, but there's no hip flexor, there's no quad, there's no butt squeezing. It's just your inner thighs, and you hold and you breathe. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Lose the ball, bring your feet together, bring your knees out to the sides, go for an inner thigh stretch that does not pop your ribs up towards the ceiling. If you need to support the backs of your legs because you're feeling either like an unmanageable amount of inner thigh stretch, or there's like weird nasty pinching in the backs of your hips, or you can't keep your ribs down, those would all be great indications that you want a little support under the backs of your legs, and you hang out here. And you breathe. And then from there, we open up the fronts of your hips and we engage your inner thighs for a little bit of a bridge. So heels hip distance apart, or ball distance or block distance or whatever you're using apart. A little bit of a squeeze, a micro squeeze. So now we're not really looking to do a huge engage of your inner thighs. We're just looking to maintain this same alignment of your thigh bones. Press your heels into the floor, keeping your back as relaxed as you can and hinging up. Right, so you could roll up, which would mean moving your pubic bones first. We want to hinge up so your whole trunk from your ribs to your pelvis comes up in a line. And you find the height where you feel some inner thigh, or no, some quad stretch. So you may or may not feel work in the backs of your legs. We're not worried about that too much at the moment. We're thinking more about getting some stretch here. And you might feel that stretch anywhere from 2 inches off the ground to a foot off the ground, and it can change from day to day. Keep your knees reaching forward towards the front of your mat and hold, thinking about this length across the fronts of your thighs, the fronts of your hips. Your back stays relaxed. Your back and stomach muscles are really just working enough to maintain this nice connection between your ribs and your pelvis. Heavy through your chest, heavy through your collarbones and your shoulder blades. Keep reaching your knees forward. It's a stretch, but it's also work. And the work should be, whatever work there is, should be inner thighs, calves, hamstrings, glutes. Right? We're not looking for this to come into your back. Your back stays relaxed. And it's really worth checking in periodically, actually, and just deliberately take a little moment. Settle your chest, relax your back, see what happens to the height of your pelvis. Are you actually using that to hold your hips up? And when you bring that down, if your hips come down a little bit, that's okay. And then slowly ease your hips down towards the floor. And of course, if your back started to get unmanageably involved or it just stopped working for you, you come down sooner than I just cued. And now we're going to do the working version. So heels pressing into the floor, and heels now also thinking of pulling your heels back towards your butt, which is going to engage more calf and hamstrings. Knees reaching forward, pelvis comes straight up through the mechanism of pushing your heels down, and keep that gentle squeeze on the ball. So it's not an uber squeeze, it's just a little squeeze. And now you're very deliberately looking for the height at which you feel the backs of your hips working. And again, this can really vary from day to day and time to time. And there's work here, 2 inches off the ground. And there's work here, 3 inches off the ground. You may find you get more, kind of a more nuanced, more stable amount of work lower to the floor. And then when you come up, your legs are inclined to pull apart. You won't be able to hold the ball so much. You get pointy butt, right? So there's lots of merit in the lower positions. And then come all the way down and completely rest your hips, your back, your stomach muscles. You need to hold onto the ball still. And again, press up. Doesn't need to be far. Reach your knees forward, pull your heels back. Keep your sit bones wide so we're not squeezing your butt to get you off the floor. You're bringing your butt off the floor, as a result of which your glutes may respond. And hopefully that makes it not feel so side of hip, makes it not feel so lower back. Check in and see, are you feeling the same amount of work from side to side? Are your hips the same distance from the ceiling? So if you're tipped, you'll feel really different amounts of work one side to the other. It's not uncommon. So see if you can play around with that. And then come on back down. Relax completely. Head, neck, shoulders, back, ribs, arms, everything chills out. And then we do one more lift. So heels press down and pull back towards you. Knees push forward. Nice long line from your pelvis to your ribs. Push your heels into the floor. Lift your hips. And remember, your hamstring work here is just as valuable as the glute work. And you're keeping your sit bones wide. And you're keeping that little squeeze on the ball. And you hold. And you play around. Because by the time you get to the third repetition, you might be feeling very different amounts of work at different heights than you did the first time. So again, you can, we're holding this for some time. You can pick 2 or 3 different positions and play around with, where, if I'm keeping all these markers in mind, where is the most amount of work? And then come all the way back down. Loose the ball, feet together, knees out to the sides, relax. And again, that relax comes with really nicely anchored lower ribs. Your lower ribs at the front pointing straight towards your pelvis, not up towards the ceiling. And again, if you need some bolstering, you absolutely put that in place. And we're going to hold here for a little bit longer. And you can totally relax and think about bunnies and unicorns, or you can do some breathing. Ponder what to have for dinner. And then bring your legs back up. And now we're going to go for a little bit of stretch to the sides of your hips. So you want a yoga strap or some other non-stretchy item. You can get your chair out of the way. You can go back to supporting your head if you know that that's a better position for you in terms of ease of your ribs down onto the floor. Left foot into the strap. Nice wrap of your hands in the strap. Right leg down on the floor. If that works for you, if you bring your right leg down onto the floor and it's uncomfortable in your hip or it's uncomfortable in your back, or the only way you can do it is by super curling your pelvis and your whole leg comes off the floor, just bend your knee. So either one, whichever you want. But the main thing here is you're keeping your left side of your butt right heavy onto the floor, and you're going to slowly slide your left leg to the right, and come back to center. You don't need to go far. And you don't want to go to a point of pain. And I have my leg fairly high up, but you absolutely could be down here. We're looking for the place where your butt has not rolled up off the floor. So if you're still having a lot of tension through the backs of your legs. The higher you go, the more likely it is that, see how my right leg is pulled off the floor and my butt is curled now? So we're looking for that length along the front line and heavy width to your sit bones. Often your range will increase quite a lot as you do this movement, right? So the first time you come across, you can only go 3 inches, and the second time you can go 4 inches, and this tension here along the side of the hip eases up. So if that happens for you, great. You can increase your range as you go. If it doesn't happen for you, also great. Stay in the range that feels most practical. 2 more. And then make nice big leg circles. Keeping your leg as relaxed as you can in your hip socket and really using the strap and your arms to make the circle happen. So this is another opportunity to try and re-pattern the tendency for your quads and hip flexors to take over and do everything. You get a nice little side helping of abdominal work by keeping your pelvis super stable on the floor. Change directions. We're doing 5 of these in each direction. If you tend to experience neck and jaw pain, making sure that this effort of holding your leg up with your hands and your arms is not creeping up into your neck and your jaw. Change over, same thing, other side. Right foot in the strap. Try left leg down on the floor. Things are different hip to hip, so one leg you might be happy leg on the floor and need to have your knee bent on the other side. Super plant your right hip. Really feel the weight of your right ribs, your right shoulder, your right butt cheek on the floor, your right sit bone pointing straight at the baseboard in front of you. And then a little shift of your leg to the left and back to center. And a little shift of your leg to the left. And always going to your stopping spot is where you're feeling some stretch, but not a 10 out of 10 amount of stretch, and certainly no pain. Either here on the closing angle, right? So we don't want to go to a place where it's pinchy or unpleasant on the side that's getting shorter, and not to a place where the stretch is too intense or there's any kind of nerve pain, zinginess along the outside of the right leg. And again, anywhere from here to here. You don't need to come really high. Last one. And then go for your circles. And again, you're using your arms and the strap to make the circle happen. You're keeping your leg as relaxed and pliable as you can get it. And you are using your stomach muscles to maintain the position between your ribs, your belly button, and your pelvis should stay the same all the time. And your hip bones don't shift closer or farther from the ceiling. Change directions. I think that was more than 5. And you'll notice that the circle is heading down. Should have mentioned that at the beginning. So if you're starting here, you're not circling up towards your chest. You are circling down from your highest point. One more. Come on back into center and let's stand up. We're going to start with just playing around with your squat. You can absolutely continue to use a ball to focus your brain's attention on not overloading the sides of your hips, although they will for sure be active, and putting it more into your inner thighs and the backs of your hips. It will also diminish the size of your squat. So when you've got the ball in place, you're probably only going to go, maybe this far. You're keeping your abdominals engaged. You're keeping your chest away from your knees, right? So that it doesn't turn into I'm squatting, when really what you're doing is you're bringing your chest and shoulders down. You want to bend your hips and your knees and keep your chest high. And come on back up. So you're not super squeezing the ball, you're just using it as a kind of as a placeholder. You're keeping your ribs lifting, you're keeping your back wide across the base of your ribs. And you're keeping in mind that if you were doing this as a weightlifting activity, it would be a completely different alignment. You may find that your range increases as you go, and that would be great, but not a requirement. One more time. From there, add some weight. Whatever you have handy. Take your feet wider this time, but feet continuing to point forward. Keep the weight in towards your chest and squat, but maintain exactly the same process of bend your knees and your hips, but keep your chest high. And keeping your chest high also involves keeping the bottom of your rib cage high. You don't keep your chest high by pushing your shoulders forward. You keep your chest high by keeping your whole entire torso kind of like that reverse magnet resisting against your legs, right? If you can imagine, this is a magnet and this is a magnet, and you've got the poles are pushing away from each other rather than pulling towards each other. And press back up. 3, and 2, and last one. Come on up. From there, we are going to actually use your side butt. You're going to keep your feet pointing forward or even a little bit pigeon-toed and do a straight leg monster walk with no resistance. So the temptation to add a band is strong, but really focus instead on engaging into the deepest muscles that connect your leg into your hip socket, keeping your chest heavy, your back relaxed, stuff out of your way, legs long and straight, continuing to be a little bit pigeon-toed throughout. Play with the size of your steps. If you're not feeling it in your side butt in the good, not overwhelming way, then play with, smaller steps or more pigeon-toed, or imagine more internal tension or less internal tension. From there, you come to, I'm going to use a chair because it's what I have, but you can do this on whatever height of thing works for you. This is like a standing pigeon, and you're bringing your foot onto the thing. Give myself a little extra height. So you're bringing your foot up onto the thing with your knee pressing out to the side. And you're going to hold here. We're looking for a nice relaxed stretch in your hip. So no pain or pressure in your knee, no pain or pressure in your hip, no pain or pressure in your lower back. And you hang out. And we're going to hang out here. You can actually do this so you're hanging out for kind of 90 seconds to 2 minutes. For the sake of brevity, we're not actually going to do that. Well, yeah, we will, because otherwise you'll be inclined not to do it. There's certainly work in your standing leg that you can pay attention to distract yourself while you wait. I don't have a clock here, so I'm not actually sure how long 1.5 to 2 minutes is. So we're going to say we're close. And then in this position, super flex your ankle. And as hard, engage your core, engage your shoulders. If you're close to a wall that you're hanging onto for balance, push into the wall, make a fist with the other hand, and push the outside edge of your foot down into the table, chair, desk, counter, whatever you're working with, as hard as you can. And hold for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, and then try and lift your foot up your heel straight up off whatever. So I can do it because I'm on a lower surface. If I was up here, I wouldn't actually be able to lift, but I would make the effort. And you do the same thing, you hold for 15. So let's say 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and relax. Shimmy that out. And then we do the same thing on the other side. You come up here and you hold and you relax. And you're allowing for the stretch, you're allowing for this leg to just drape towards the floor. You can use whatever you've got around you for support. And hopefully as you hold the position, as you're here for this, kind of 90 to 120 seconds, you are noticing that you can relax more into the stretch, that you can get more turnout of your leg. Not forcing it, but just letting it drape. Again, we don't want to be in a place where there's any pinching or jamming or jarring, no nerve sensation, no unhappy jointing, just a nice sense of stretch. And you continue to hold, and you're long and strong through your standing leg. So there's work in your side butt and your glute of the standing leg. And then you start to set. So super plant your standing leg. Engage your abdominal muscles. Engage your arms, your chest, and your shoulders. Really push into the wall or whatever you're hanging onto. Make a fist with the other arm. Flex your ankle, flex your foot. Take a breath in. And then pull the outside edge of your foot down into the surface that you're supporting on and hold for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Work here. 13, 14, 15. And then right away, pull the inside edge of your heel up off the surface if you can, or just imagine the internal resistance of pretending you can lift, depending on the range that you were at. And I've already chatted, so we'll say 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and relax. If you're feeling particularly matcha, you could do 2 or 3 of those on each side. So play around with those and see how it feels. Check in with me for questions and have fun.